What is something rich people buy that poor people know nothing about? Rich Russian businessmen rent taxis that are luxurious on the inside, but look like ambulances on the outside to avoid traffic. Source: obscure brands of regular items. I have a few well-off friends and trust fund babies, and all of them need obscure brands of regular items. They want potato chips, it can't be Lay's, it has to be a imported thin-cut potato from France that was harvested by the bay on a cool afternoon by a happy French man. My sister used to work at a very expensive hotel in London. She told me that new clients would check in, and then once they left the room the staff would go in and inventory everything they brought with them and where they put it and how with the help of staff they set the room up. They do this so the next time the client schedules a room, the staff can run out and buy everything on the list so the client doesn't have to have any luggage and everything is set up how they like it. They have thousands of clients, and she showed me pictures of room layouts and lists of clothing, watches, and other things that are always set up the same for the same client. Crazy stuff. This is embarrassing, but until last year, I am now 24, it did not occur to me that people could file their own taxes and not use an accountant. Or rather, John, the family accountant edit, forgot to tell you about John. I heard a story once about a young Russian man who inherited $20 billion and decided to eventually get married. For his bachelor party, he invited all his boys to Russia, escorted them in a black car right from the runway, and they were driven 4 hours deep into the Russian forest. They stopped at a random hotel for the night, and then in the morning, they were dropped off in the middle of the forest. All of a sudden, a bunch of Russian men riding horses and dressed in traditional Russian battle armor surround the guys. They tell the guys that, in honor of their boy's marriage, they are going to get suited up, ride horses, and rape and pillage a nearby village. I kid you not, their billionaire friend purchased a random, small Russian village deep in the forest, rented 54 of the best prostitutes in Russia, 18 guys x 3 girls each, to act as the villagers, rigged the entire place to be suitable for raping and pillaging, and finally, placed 18 huge cubes of frozen ice inside each of the houses in the village. These giant ice cubes contained precious jewels, Rolex watches, money, and other valuables. The 18 guys were all given a time limit, and the girls were incentivized with money to distract the guys as much as possible in their quest to break down the solid ice blocks. I will let your imagination run wild. From what I've seen in Switzerland, most very rich people don't actually appear to be rich. They live in big houses, but it's all very private, and they don't show off their wealth like other less rich people that try to show off everything they own and don't own. The houses are usually in remote places and with walls or bushes to stop you from seeing what's inside. The typical nouveau rich will just show off their mansion at every opportunity. A very rich guy is not the one that is driving a Ferrari and slowing down to revving his engine near women. A very rich guy is the one that you don't actually see, you merely feel the wealth when the occasional Bentley or Rolls-Royce passes by without making heads turn. Some anecdotal story that happened with me. I was at an ATM machine in Switzerland, behind an old lady that looked to be quite poor. When it was my turn to use the machine, I noticed that she didn't remove her card, and I could still check how much money she had in her bank account and even withdraw money. She had around 8 million Swiss francs. And yes, I called her and told her that she forgot to remove her card. Kidnapping insurance. I worked for a company that sold kidnap insurance. Although the most interesting part is a majority of the time the person who is insured had no idea about it. For the people that do know and are going to a place with a high chance of being kidnapped, they are given some training on what to do. I got to spend one day trying to avoid getting kidnapped. We drove around in Manhattan in armored S-Class while random cars were the kidnappers. The instructor showed us what to look for and what to do in certain situations. Fake love. Yes, men. People who will pretend that you are brilliant and correct and righteous and meaningful when really you are just rich. Poor people don't understand what it means for someone to act respectful and sincerely, because no one would ever do that to a poor person. A lot of people have multiple cars, but rich people have cars specifically for the weekend. During the week you drive your average S-Class Lexus/7 Series that you don't mind subjecting to cruel traffic, but from Thursday to Sunday you drive your weekend car. These fall on 3 spectrums: antiques, sports cars, or luxury cars. I don't know much about the antiques, but I love going for drives in the area on Fridays just to look at the Rolls-Royce Phantoms and Lambos. Lambos Ferraris are usually driven by younger rich people, Arabs and athletes, and are seen at night usually racing. The luxury cars are the old people. Maseratis are not weekend cars, they're work cars. And every Saturday morning there's a car show in our town. Also banks. If you're rich, you usually are a preferred customer at multiple big name banks. They know you by name and know your family, and you can give upper level management personal calls for help. I live in Nick and work as a courier. I regularly deliver things like $50 cookies, 4 of them, across town for a $15 delivery charge. $65 for 4 cookies. Then I must go through the service entrance under the building as I am not allowed in the regular halls. Upon arriving I hand the cookies to the servant who answers the door that is in an elevator that opens onto the kitchen usually. I have delivered a $35 bagel. The new thing is cold pressed juices. Daily I will drop an $80 order for 4 juices plus delivery cost. So pushing a $100 for some juice. The apartment's overlooking Central Park. It's crazy. I saw a 12-year-old kid in a private school uniform wearing a brand new Apple Watch and eating with friends at a cafe that had to be $30 a head for a coffee and a snack. Then left and walked into a brownstone, $5 10 million, in Manhattan. That kid will go to a schools that I will never see, make friends and connections that are impossible otherwise. The 1% live a different life. Different rules, different opportunities. I think it's great for them. My only concern is the resources that are required to maintain that life are staggering. The carbon footprint, the man hours of people serving them. Mind-boggling. My dad's rich but he doesn't spend much, and we've lived a middle class life even though we could be living a much lavish life. No complaints at all though. But because of my dad's wealth I am friends with wealthy people and I have friends who live pretty wild. If I go to a club with one of my friends, the bouncer will know my friend and just let us in, even when half of us are underage and we have no girls with us. I also dated a girl whose dad was the CEO of a very large federal funded nonprofit. I'm not allowed to mention names of politicians, but I'll tell you that House of Cards has a lot of truth to it. There's also the friends I had who were ducking idiots but still got into top-notch universities. And then there were the other not so friendly kids at my private high school whose fathers would give so much money to our high school that these kids could get away with pretty much anything. Racism, cheating and skipping class. And me witnessing all this was weird because the way my dad raised my family with a save first mentality, I never really asked for things that much. But yeah. Rich white people crazy. Growing up in the 80s and 90s as a kid, all I remember is that if someone ever owned a refrigerator that had an electric ice maker and served water, I would assume they were rich. The same was said about families with kids that owned Power Wheels or had a cell phone in their car. Sheet. How times have changed. Nothing mind-blowing, really. Hunting licenses that let you shoot exotic game. Stuff like rhino or lion or elephant. You can basically buy university spots if your family donates enough cash to the university. Some family members who did really poorly into high school were let into prestigious schools and programs. I benefited from that too, honestly. My grades were very good, 85% AVG, but I was still just under the minimum average and I had no real extracurriculars. I was let into the program I wanted. I didn't even write an essay like the other people. And then there are those hyperliberal hipster kids who buy stupid shit like organically farmed, free trade hemp backpacks. Some people are mentioning things like hiring famous bands to play at your birthday, or playing with famous athletes. The families who do those things usually lose their money in a generation. Unless they're Arab oil Sikhs, it'll take a bit longer for them to go broke. The private flight comments are a bit more accurate. We don't have as many hoops to jump through when we're getting into a chartered flight. Mingling with the socially, politically, financial elite is also true. I'm only a second year university student with above average grades and I've already met a bunch of renowned people in the industry I'm planning to go it. I was introduced to these people by my dad and grandparents' political influence, where I live people and companies are limited in how much they can donate to politicians and parties. We don't have PACs here for example. It's not as big of a deal here, but it's easier for us to talk to politicians. Respect. It depends on how you obtained your wealth. If you're an athlete, movie star or musician you won't have much respect because those people are usually bankrupt by the end of their life. Also people from those families are somewhat infamous for their poor behavior. From what my older family members think, people who made their money though tech startups are not as respected. These people tend to be new age, untraditional and on the far left in the political spectrum. For what it's worth, my family made most of their money through oil and gas. Was at a friend's house, very rich friend, and his daughter came back from school all sad. So I asked why and apparently one her classmates spread rumors about her how she's rich and snotty and always flies everywhere in private jets. She started to cry and said I don't always fly in private jets. Sometimes I have to ride first class. At the time she was 7 years old. So poor people know nothing of all the struggles that the riches go through. I'm not rich but etiquette school. I don't remember how the conversation started, but a friend of mine from college starting talking to me about etiquette school. I must have given her a questionable look because she immediately paused, looked embarrassed and said something along the lines of not everyone goes to etiquette school, do they? Admission into top universities for their kids, nephews and nieces, and anyone else close enough to them. I didn't really believe how this worked until I saw it firsthand. The person I knew received an acceptance letter to Harvard without knowing that he'd even applied. His mother put in a call. I was devastated and impressed at the same time. They paid $10 million just to get her into Yale? That doesn't seem very smart to me. For $10 million I want Harvard or Caltech or Oxford. Just kidding. I want to skip college and go have a happy life. I've worked with high and ultra high net worth individuals in the past and they are the loneliest people you've ever met. One guy I knew perfectly encapsulated it. He had inherited significant amounts of wealth and real estate. He was a nice guy, had been well educated and wasn't altogether ugly, but he was so lonely. His wife clearly loved him for his money. People around him were either sycophants or other wealthy people, so he'd surround himself with wealth managers, lawyers, investors, etc., and would try to take the relationship from one of a professional association to a personal relationship. He'd invite groups out and buy alcohol and beer and outrageously expensive food to make people like him. But it didn't help, he was still just a lonely dude. People either see you as a cash machine, or they don't see you. Middle class folks aren't inviting a millionaire over. Women who approach and woo you are often doing it because you have money, and those women who aren't after your money, you're suspicious of anyways. I felt bad for him. It was like being trapped in a prison. Sure, he could buy a Ferrari and a Lamborghini for fun, but he couldn't share it with anyone and had no one to watch a game with. His wife was off at events and parties and she was only interested in what his material wealth could get her. It was sad. Heated driveways. Heated floors are common obviously, at least here in Canada, but I was in a home recently that had a cool application. They had a space by the front door that was heated slate tiles, the purpose of which being that if you left your wet shoes sitting on the tiles when you take them off, they dry faster, and the water that comes off of them just evaporates off the tile. No messy rugs or those little trays for snow boots. Just mop or Swiffer over it every now and then to get the salt or whatnot. Heated driveways are becoming more common, especially with solar catching on more. In my area I could easily imagine it as a feature in homes starting around $750,000, which isn't too huge. It's obviously big money, but it's not like you're in the millionaires only club. One thing that surprised me, interacting with rich New Yorkers who would summer near where my grandfather lived, there is a level of wealth where it is expected that everyone has multiple homes, and as such there is very little possessiveness tied to home ownership. Want to stay in some obscure part of the world for a year? Someone will likely loan you the use of their fabulous but well-hidden home in that region, because why wouldn't they? In fact, there are people who specialize in creating those homes, decorating them and making sure they are secure. Knowing full well that, outside of a quick visit to inspect the property, it's very likely that the owner may never visit it again. Of course, you're expected to do the same. Collecting homes in fantastic locations is no longer just about going there yourself, but about having the right currency to loan to others. So, while homes aren't surprising, and even the idea the rich own exotic homes in exotic places is commonly understood, the whole idea of the fluid nature of home ownership at that tier of society is rarely understood.